Hello, good morning, and welcome to Focus on Parliament. You are watching Civic Space TV, and I'm your host, Hariss Akampulira. On this episode of Focus on Parliament, we take a look at the proposed government bailout to one business magnate, Patrick Ntature, which has caused a lot of talking, a lot of commotion within the hallowed halls of Uganda's parliament. And on this show, we ask pertinent questions regarding what is the procedure that ought to be followed by government in order to give out these kinds of bailouts. But even before that, it is paramount to ask that is it proper to socialize losses and privatize profits? Joining me in studios are two eloquent gentlemen, very refined men. Lawel, who is the acting president of the Now generation. Is that so, Mr. Lawel? Is that a proper introduction?
I associate with the Now generation. I am not a president, though.
Who is the leader of the Now generation?
We don't have president.
But is this a political movement?
There's a
what
vacuum.
is it?
There's no leadership in the
you could say it is a pressure group which seeks to hold those with power accountable and to provide alternatives where possible.
Anyhow, Lawel, you're most welcome to the show.
I'm glad to be here. This is my debut.
Great. Next is Comrade Kidega Moses, who is a common figure, but also a law student at Makerere University, and also a leader with the National Youth Council. Mr. Kidega Moses, good morning, and you are most welcome to Focus on Parliament.
Thank you. It's a fantastic morning. The morning where South Africa again makes it to the final of the World Cup rugby competitions, and this afternoon, this evening, we shall be witnessing South Africa, take another World Cup rugby trophy. But that aside, I'm very happy to be here, Ndugu Hariss.
Yes.
And I look forward to a fruitful conversation regarding the pertinent issues that you did give a preamble on.
Great. You sound like a South African supporter.
Yes, the South Africa has had itself positioned very strategically in terms of Africa's ideological outlook of resistance. And so we support South Africa for so many reasons.
Lawel has a response.
We shall have that discussion.
Before we delve into the debate, it's ironical.
Okay.
But I know supporting South Africa for its resistance stand, given your political affiliation.
But also, there's a concern, I think, from some young people that the Springboks, which is the rugby team, has failed to decolonize. Given the ratio of blacks in South Africa and the ratio of black players in the
that's South African team.
But that's a discussion
we
can always have.
It's being
especially
by Sia, who is a black man. So at least the team leader is a black man.
That's optics.
All right, guys. I think that we organize another show to discuss but a very important one, because sport is a very important aspect of our societies. So it's very, very important to have it. I wish you well with South Africa tomorrow. That's South Africa versus
New Zealand.
New Zealand is also quite a strong one. So
both teams are good, but
you will need the luck.
Yeah.
All right, let's delve into today's conversation, and I will start with you, Lawel. We have unconfirmed reports that Cabinet has approved a proposal to bail out one Patrick Ntature, who is a renowned business person in the country. This bail, we are told, it is up to the tune of 240 billion Uganda shillings, or about 66 million US dollars. And we are told that this is being disguised as the purchase of Mr. Ntature's Electromax thermal plant. Yes, what do we know? What is true? What is not true so far?
I think that I wouldn't want to discuss what's true and what's not true in the interest of the public. I think this discussion needs to start generally, whether it is Bitature, whether it is any other person, on whether this is the best intervention model. Like you said in your introduction about the fact that the citizens have to bear the burden of the losses, and when these individuals are making profit, they are the ones who take back the profit, and we don't get it. I think for me, I have a problem with the model. After the, I think, 2008 economic crisis in the US, I think that's when Obama comes in, or that's when he was in charge. Because of the breakdown of the financial system, the US thought that they could pay back their bonds, and then banks would get money, and they would use that. That would have a ripple effect on maybe on the interest rate. They also bailed out some big companies which they thought that would stabilize the economy. What actually happened is that when banks got those bailouts, instead they reinvested them in bonds to generate more profit. So in effect, there was no trickle down to the people that they were intended to help. So it is not essentially true that once government gives out bailouts, because these individuals are private entities first. They are not public.
Yes.
They don't work in the interest of the public. They work in their own interest. And so usually they don't even give that trickle-down effect you would expect. That's from the academics.
Yes.
That's from the economics level.
On that very point, Lawel, the argument goes that these so-called big-to-fail private entities are so important to the economy that the government cannot allow them to fail. And they explained that in terms of the number of jobs that would be lost if these entities failed, or the kind of microeconomic effect it would have on the economy.
Yeah, but even if that were the case, we would then go into a discussion is that that's over 200, 300 billion reinvested in Vitature's business empire versus if it is invested in startups, or an equal sum in terms of subsidization of young people's startups. Which one would provide more solvency to the unemployment problem? Would it be Bitature, or would it be investing in youth and young people's startups, or government subsidizing startups so that they don't have to pay particular taxes? So I don't know if you get the opportunity cost.
Yes.
So, again, but also the problem is that even we need to also examine the reasons why the Bitature empire then cripples. Exactly. Because it is not that it is crippling as a product of a general problem in the investment climate of Uganda, or like we had the COVID. It's that it is possible that you have problems within the management of his empire. He has other debts, he has other loopholes. So it's not essentially true also that if you're investing this money, you're essentially getting in what you want per se. But also, you know for sure that this is not the first time Bitature is being bailed out. And so he was bailed out, he fails, he comes back. We have to again reinvest that money into him. There's no mode of accountability on whether if he fails to utilize that money, somehow he compensates. He can't compensate because the core reason why he's being bailed out is because he has no capacity to jumpstart his own. But also politically, is it true that government, out of rationality and consideration of economic factors, decides to bail out Bitature, or it is because Bitature is Bitature? Would you say that...
Who is Bitature?
I think Bitature is one of those well-connected entrepreneurs. Yes, so he can always use his power and connections to get bailouts, which I don't think is possible for many other investors. So I think generally for me, I think it is a bad decision. 2, the economic model is not well revised. 3, we cannot bear the burden of his own mismanagement of his own enterprise. Like we've said, it's not the first time he's being bailed out. It's the second time. So what happens if you continue?
Yeah, let me bring you in, Moses. Lawel argues that it's a bad decision. That's also not transparent. There's no accountability. The procedures are not clear for the public to scrutinize. And he also asks why, why Bitature all the time. What's your take?
Thank you, Hariss and Lawel. Hariss, I think about early this year, I happened to be up country in Gulu, where I come from, and I had a chat with my mother. My mother runs a small kiosk in Gulu Market, in Gulu Main Market, where she sells clothes and other things, bags and shoes. My mother, about 2 months ago, failed to reservice her loan that she got from two loans actually. One that she got from a small circle in the market, the other that she got from a microfinance. And eventually she had to lose her business. The point here is that Bitature is only the pronounced individual or enterprise that we are getting to know of. But there are so many businesses out there that are closing because of the very hostile environment that they operate in. You look at the tax regime. You look at issues like access to market. You look at issues like the pricing and quality control. Again, I love to use real life stories, and to this point, I will again use this particular story. Again, one of my family members happens to grow rice. No, maize actually. She told me that she averagely was selling a kilo of maize after harvesting at around 1,000. But a few months ago, when she harvested, the price of maize had dropped to around 700 a kilo. Sorry, 700, yes, a kilo. So it means that she had to do what you call commodity holding. You hold your commodity until the price has stabilized, then you can resell, where you're able to earn profit. All right. The point I'm trying to put here is that vast majority of businesses out there are struggling, not just Bitature. And this is on account of the business environment. Like I had mentioned, the tax regime, you look at access to market, and how government has completely divorced itself from having regulations in the market economy. It has allowed the demand and force.
But Moses,
I would like to dictate completely.
I would like to ask you the same question I put Lawel. I mean, with respect to the plight of your mother and many other millions Ugandans who are engaged maybe in small-scale businesses, the economists who, maybe support this kind of approach by government to bail out businesses like Bitature, their main argument is like, these are big businesses. In other words, they are key players in the economy and therefore cannot be left to fail. And I mean, the jobs is one of those factors that is always thrown into the equation to justify why these companies should not be allowed to fail. The example of Bitature, for example, Electromax thermal plant, which is the major supplier of electricity, I don't know to what extent in West Nile, are you suggesting that there are no benefits of government stepping in to save Electromax from its financial woes?
Yeah, good question. And just to respond, allow me borrow or to build on the context that Lawel gave earlier on of the 2008 economic recession.
Yes.
That recession, many people assumed that it was premised on the account of maybe the bad economic policies then. But the research that was done by PwC, which was an accounting firm, revealed that majority of the businesses that were struggling to repay their debts and loan were running their businesses poorly. Take an example of Clarks. Clarks was making shoes that were durable for 10 years. This audit report did indicate that if you're making shoes that are durable for 10 years, what is the frequency? How many times is someone going to come to repurchase a Clarks shoe? That is why when Clarks was taken over by a Chinese company, Clarks these days makes shoes that don't last
for 1 year.
Yes, maximum a year. So you're forced to come back to repurchase the same product. So that shows.
So would you support such a business model?
No.
Because at the end of the day, the model by clerks shows that it would minimize the cost on the citizens, on the clients.
Yes.
So the new model by the Chinese company makes sure that the client has to.
But a business is a profit-making venture.
So businesses should.
No, I think that's funny. Depending on which side you are, he might be right, but you're also right that there's a consumer who wants something durable. Let's to buy a Chinese product. It depends.
Exactly. Exactly. But also, to push here a little bit.
My point is that Bitature finds himself where he is today because his business isn't making sufficient profit. That's why he is suffering a loss. So businesses should be able to make profit so that they are afloat. They are above the average. All right. But Bitature finds himself where he is today because his business, what he's investing isn't equating to what he's getting out. So I'm giving you the classic example to show you that businesses must be focused on making profit. But should government bail out businesses in times of crisis like this? I think it is, government is a duty bearer and government owes its citizens certain leverage, more so in times of crisis. What I disagree with is the procedure, that it should be a systematic way. It shouldn't be you handpicking and saying, but no, no, it should be systematic. Let's get this money, put it somewhere in maybe UDB, let Bitature and any other business person who is struggling with credit be able to access money in a formal way and repay it back. So my disagreement is on the approach of how it's being done.
Let me bring in Lawel.
My problem is why should government and essentially citizen bear the burden of mismanagement or poor decision making of those big company leaders? So this is what happens. Bitature goes and negotiates whether it was a bad deal or good deal with Vantage. He fails to live up to the task and Vantage takes over. He goes to courts in Uganda. After this guy says he doesn't have locus, he goes to London and loses the case. There are similar cases even for Biyinzika, where the venture investments, equity financing, because these individuals are desperate, they end up taking unfair terms and conditions. We can have a discussion on how to deal with those venture capital funders, right? But to the extent that the decision between the proprietor and the Vantage is poor or is a bad decision, why should a citizen or Uganda bear the brunt of that poor decision that is being made? Because that's a question I have. Two, can there be an alternative that if government is bailing out, maybe it is buying equity within that entity it is buying, so that we know that the people of Uganda have stake. Because stake, not just in owning part of that investment, but also in running it. So that even if we make losses, it is because of our own decisions of the government. That
so we are told that the deal is to sell Electromax thermal plants to government.
Yes.
Yeah, but you know,
which would fit.
Like this guy.
No, we are not sure. Although of course we are told.
I think Lawel's fears are founded because I think there is an incident where government of Uganda procured, purportedly procured shares either in Lawel or in Atiak, but up to date, government has never been able to gain possession of those shares. So the fears are founded that even when government claims that it is going to procure either shares or these things, is that history has showed us that it doesn't accumulate into that.
But the fears aside, because for now we cannot confirm because there is no official report that has come out to show us the basis on which the government is doing what we are told is doing. But then if unofficial information is that the government is buying that company at the tune of 66 million. So Lawel, that was your argument. So are you fine knowing that the government is going to buy this electricity plant?
Again, that's quite still unofficial, because many are arguing that is a disguise of buying Electromax, but essential deal is bailing out Vitature. But I think still we don't argue that the case itself of this individual who we have bailed out before and still gotten in the same loophole. You remember even the same Bule case.
Yes. Yeah.
Initially they bailed them out. It failed to work out. They wanted another bailout, which government did not provide, and of course they fell off. Of course they kept disgruntled and all that, but the truth is we also need to think of government's position on why should they proceed to invest this money, and they are not sure. And also we are not, like I said, the problems of Vitature could even be as bigger than what we are facing now. He may even have more debts or more loopholes. We're not sure that if we invest this, we bail him out, those things are certain.
Yeah.
I think I want to talk about, I think in response to Kidega, is I think we also need to be sympathetic. We also need to understand the position of government. Because government can't be responsible for everything. Given that we exist in a capitalist economy, it is highly possible that investment can go wrong or bad. And so I don't expect us to always expect government to intervene, or always sometimes even take the blame when an investment has gone wrong. You know for sure that, for example, investments like in agriculture are so much influenced by natural weather, natural factors, and things can go wrong. It's that anyone who is investing knows there's a risk of losing. And whereas there are times when government policy causes that loss, I don't think it's in all times. And when that happens, it shouldn't be government to be blamed, expected.
Fair point. Yes, Moses, you wanted to come in.
Yeah, I just wanted to supplement that. I want to speak broadly to the mischief and the principle behind the actions of government. I think that because as a country, in the wave of the structural adjustment programs that encouraged us to privatize and open up the economy to private public cooperation, is that now we find ourselves having an economy which is largely dominated by private players.
Yeah.
And you see, I have not come across an economy that has grown without a functional private sector. Is that the idea behind trying to say we need to keep the likes of Vitature and many others in business is that because we need to have a functional private sector. Because when that sector is functioning, then you're able to create enterprise and therein create jobs. And when you have jobs, then you have more employed citizens and therefore you have more taxable Ugandans. So the principle of trying to ensure that the private sector is working, I buy into it completely. My point of departure is the procedure of how it is being done. And because tomorrow, if my own business X begins to have issues that I cannot finance the small debt that I've gotten from a given bank, is government also going to be able to come into my intervention? I think most likely not. But there should be a system whereby even when I run a small medium enterprise, there is a system that allows me to access credit that is soft and recapitalize my business, rather than this approach of government saying, "Oh, but now we know Vitature, let us, intervene and salvage his business." So, but also government being government is that, and I had mentioned this earlier on, that if the underlying issues are not addressed, there will be many other Vitatures whose businesses are going to, like you said, a business is, you can invest and you can either make a profit or a loss, but we should be able to create an environment that limits the losses. All right? That what is the outlook of the tax regime? What is the outlook? How far does government go in terms of subsidizing certain things? All right? To allow the cost of production become less. So government in this cannot be completely exonerated. They have a big role to play, more so in terms of policy, because Uganda as a country has unfortunately taken an outward-looking economic policy. We want to attract foreign direct investors, and we do so by putting out all these incentives and all these attractive policies in the disguise of trying to attract them to invest into our country. But we are doing this at the expense of the domestic ordinary investor that, if given chance and given support by government, should have been able to grow their business. All right. But so I think it at times zeroes down to the economic outlook of those who are seated somewhere planning for this country's economy. They should be able to be more inward looking. And
fair point. But just hold it a little bit, Lawel. Let's interrogate further the method of bailout in and by itself. Is it economically sound? What do we learn, for example, from previous cases? You mentioned the case of Sembule. I think it was bailed out for the first time. Of the credit that was due to the Kenyan company was cleared by government, but then it still went under. The case of General Motors in the United States of America shows us that it received a bailout of about $50 billion US dollars. I think about 5 years later, it had reduced its value to around 11-20 million. So, gentlemen, is this method of bailing out economically viable? And if not, what are the other alternatives that, if government wants to save these enterprises for purposes of saving jobs for the citizens, should be looking at?
I think, first of all, a bailout is a desperate measure. I think by the time government comes to bail out an individual or a given enterprise, is that most options have been exhausted. But because of asked, what should government be doing fundamentally? And I tried to explain this earlier on, which is government must create an enabling environment. If the environment is sufficient and working, the issue of bailout will never come up.
But on the point of enabling environment, and I think that Lawel hinted on it earlier, that the context of the US bailout was against the background of the crisis, the 2008 financial crisis. It was a global crisis. So the environment was that of a crisis. By and large, other private entities within the Ugandan economy are thriving within, I don't know if thriving is the right term, but they are surviving within the same macro and microeconomic policies that Bitature is operating. So
no, that is
which environment do you want?
You are asserting that is you missing my preamble. I mentioned to you that Bitature is only the renown. There are many businesses out there that are collapsing each and every single day. Correct? Yes, whereas there are success stories, and I agree with you, but how many are there? The majority of the businesses out there
in the interest
cannot even pay their taxes. URA is always trying to hunt them.
Yes, in the interest of our viewers, colleagues, can you mention some of those factors? Yes, that you think make the Ugandan business environment not conducive for investment. And I'll start with you, Lawel.
Okay, sure.
So I think that those exist. So and I think that then the intervention should seek to solve those challenges that make it difficult for business to thrive, as opposed to then, you leave these factors to exist and make it difficult for business to thrive, and then wait to give bailout to some few. And that's what he was saying. The issue of interest. And I think the president has acted shocked of recent when he said, banks are giving out an interest rate of 20%. And those are the issues which make it difficult for business, especially startups, to function. So the question then, if that is the cause of the problem, isn't the intervention only logical that you deal with that problem? You know what China has, what it did, it built, I think, these companies that are owned by the state but operate as private entities, like Sinok. So what it does is that it gives them a lot of money to go and invest across the world, but like at an interest rate of 1% or even 2%. But that means that if they come to Uganda, they cannot compete with a local company which is servicing an interest of 20%. You mean the local company would be outcompeted? Yes, exactly. So I would be okay with getting the over 300 billion and government is investing it into a startup after a rational process, and it's getting minimal interest, but this local company is able to thrive, as opposed to saying that I'm going to use that 300 billion and give it to a one Bitature whose business problems could even be a result of his own undoings. There are people who have criticized even his mode of investment. So the point, and that's the point I was trying to make. And this is why I think Kidega doesn't get you. But sometimes the mode of bailing out is understandable if there is a general crisis that is caused for factors beyond an individual's own making, such as the breakdown of the financial system as well as AIDS, such as COVID, and generally government needs to intervene to save these. But also that model needs to be revised. It is quite different where you have everyone existing in the same investment, in the same economy, and then you want to bail out a few. It could even be true, even if Kidega's case is true, that there are many other big. The question is, are all of them, do they have equal access to the bailer? Why does it have to be Vitature? One Vitature who is always going to be privileged, he first got a bailout, he wants another bailout. Why not everyone else? But just respond to your question. I think there are factors which are making it difficult for businesses to thrive, such as interest rates. Because if you compare with Kenya, they have these holidays for youth startups after a certain number of years to start being taxed. That is not happening. Increasingly, the URA seems to be very hungry. It's looking to tax everything heavenly possible to get revenue. You know for sure that there are people who don't pay taxes. If you have discussion with people who work with customs union,
but
you know that the people who are not paying their share.
But to be fair to government, Lawel, isn't this a general African problem, or not even African problem, but a problem of developing economies generally, that the cost of capital is high?
No, I don't think it. That would only be. No, I don't think it is essentially true, because the question is, how do you get as much taxes? It is by making sure the tax base grows. So even if you milk a startup and you want to charge it 20%, you want to charge it at every opportunity, or even the loans are expensive.
No, we are talking about the cost of credit. In other words, the interest rate that we've talked about from these commercial institutions. Isn't it agreeable that generally across the developing countries,
I think
the rates are higher compared to the developed countries?
But why?
Because there is no African economics. All of us are playing in the market economy.
No.
The question is why. There are many factors, but one of the issues would be, to what extent is government intervening? To what extent is government intervening to protect the person who wants the loans, because government has locus there. Two, that we also have cases where government is getting massive loans from local domestic investors and local banks, which makes it hard for an individual to compete with the bank. So there are many factors which government can pay attention to.
Fair enough. Yes, Moses.
But you see, and putting this in perhaps maybe a global context, because you asked that, why is credit more expensive in LDCs vis-a-vis those modern economies? Is that
but generally my question is why you say that the Ugandan business environment is not conducive, and I wanted you to point out for our viewers some of those aspects that you think make the Ugandan business environment not as conducive as it ought to be.
Fair enough, and I want to do that in a second, but before I do that, is that we are still stuck to the Bretton Woods consensus of 1944 that engineered the world financial system that we see today, that introduced IMF and World Bank. And if you recall, the mischief or the foundation on which the World Bank was built was to enable low developed countries to have access to capital to facilitate their development. Whereas IMF was basically to put in place financial control policies that allow the control of credit here and there. So the world is still stuck to that kind of consensus, which does not favor the African low developed economies, because we find ourselves borrowing so much money that we are not able to repay back. And this eventually becomes another burden on the taxpayer, that even the small taxes that we collect domestically here as a country, so much of it is being used to re-service the debt that we got so many years ago. Debt that we were encouraged to get by the Bretton Woods consensus, right? So there are so many issues that have been building one on the other that have led to where we find ourselves today, both as a continent and as a country. But what factors do I think have made the business environment hostile? Lawel mentioned two of them. One is the cost of capital, interest rate. Is that last financial year, government owes domestic financial institutions to a tune of 1.2 trillion Uganda shillings. That government has not repaid domestic financial institutions. So if you have a government that is lending money to that extent domestically, there is no commercial bank that is going to put you on the same pedal with government, because lending to government is easier. It comes with security. A government cannot run. A government will be here for today, tomorrow, but the risk that comes
with
lending,
said the risk that comes to know that these institutions were lending at 20%.
Of course, our president, our president.
Was he playing politics?
Yes, shocked.
Allow me to reserve my comment.
All right. Please go on with your comment.
But the point is, this is the kind of government that we have that is borrowing money to a tune of 1.2 trillion. So, with the risk that comes with borrowing money to a private player, commercial banks are by all means going to find it more convenient to lend money to government. So, when you're competing with a big player like government, the interest rate is by all means going to go high. Government needs to find other means of how it generates its income to finance national development. Domestic borrowing should be the least, if not an option at all. That is one. Two is the tax regime that he did allude to. The National Youth Council is currently pushing for the startup bill in Parliament. And the idea is that we need to allow youth-led enterprises to have some sort of tax breathing space. That it is impossible for a youth-led business to open today and they have to pay all these taxes, URA, KCCA, and all these things. The business is just not going to thrive. It cannot see its first, second birthday. So we are pushing for a startup bill. Now that goes back to the issue of policy that I talked about, that government must be at the forefront of creating policies that enable businesses to grow. But also the issue of market. Government, because of its structure, has access to so many potential markets. It should be intentional in terms of creating partnerships that allow the products that Ugandans are making or that are producing in their farms to have a market on a scale beyond just the national scale. For example, we are in the era of the African Continental Free Trade Area. But how strategically are we going to position ourselves as a country to benefit from that very good legislation that is trying to limit the tariffs on goods and labor? All right. So I think it's about being strategic. Government must support domestic players to add value to their products, so that these products, when put on a market beyond Uganda, can compete.
Fair enough.
So, yeah.
Yes, but I would like now to move on. I would like us to move on to considering the procedure itself. One of the honorable MPs who has been critical of this bailout is Honorable Jeffrey Ayivu. And for record purposes, he's an honorable member of parliament. He said he's going to oppose the bill, the bailout. And one of the reasons he says he's going to oppose it is that there's a little bit of cherry picking. There is no clear policy. There is no clear procedure. Lawel, do you feel there is no... Let me start by asking, from your research about these government bailouts, subsidies, and all that, do you think we have a guiding policy in place for government before it gives out such handouts?
I think no. And I think it is a product of incompetence, to politics, and I think yes, corruption. Incompetence is that I don't sometimes think that these individuals go down to analyze who needs a bailout, who doesn't, what works, what doesn't work. But also the politics is who knows who supports government, who doesn't. I may not share like clear cases, but they're young, or not even young, they're serious entrepreneurs who have opened shop in Europe and South America over coffee. Sometimes they struggle, but they never get bailout. And then you have examples of the Rugasiras and this in of the president, what's his Rwabogo, getting this money for testing billions of money. And then you ask yourself, is this just politics? Is it corruption? Or it is also an indicator of incompetence? Because also if you want to favor someone, then it must be invested. You're favoring them, but in a model that will work even for themselves. Because if you look at the money that is invested in the coffee project, even if it is this first family, can they not invest it in something that works for them and the population too? Let's agree there's favoritism, but also how are the favored also managing what is given to them? I think it's an argument
that's a nice argument. You're saying be corrupt, but at least
I don't agree with it. I don't agree with favoritism.
Condoning
I am not, and it should be put. It should be put on record. And this is an argument I think Mwenda has made for corruption. I don't agree with it. I don't agree with corruption, but I understand the politics we are in. And I'm saying, okay, you're corrupt, but even when you're corrupt, can't you?
Don't cross the line.
No, not even if crossing the line, but even the corrupt, can't you optimally exploit what you're given to make use of it? That maybe somehow we can get to benefit, even if it's passively or even if it is not intentionally from your investment. Because the argument by those who support Andrew's narrative is that if someone embezzles money and invests in the economy, people are going to get jobs. The problem we have is that even those who are corrupt don't invest that money in ways that work for the population.
I think that the challenge that the Andrew Mwenda argument.
Allow me to interject on this.
Just a moment, then I come in, because I would like us to clarify.
I think that should be understood.
I would like us to clarify this.
Allow me to make this clear to Lawel.
I would like us to clarify this.
Yes.
Because I have had Andrew Mwenda and some other, renowned commentators arguing that sometimes corruption is good, and that is what you are attempting to do. That even when you
trying to marinate it and make it look like
the danger with that is where do you draw the line?
Okay, get to understand.
No.
I am saying first, that is a problem of corruption.
Yeah, let me allow Kidega's question, then you answer the Matiago. Yeah,
Lawel, you see. What you're trying to justify to us, Lawel, is something very impractical. Because, and I'll tell you why. You're asking us a question that, even when you're corrupt and you have access to all this money, at least use the money in a way that benefits both you and some parts of the population. But for you to expect that is for you to be naive. Because look at, for example, loan and aid that comes from World Bank and IMF. That is the most misappropriated money that governments of Africa have access to. Because when you have money that you can barely account for, there are no stringent conditions for you to repay back. It is just natural instinct. You won't take this money seriously. And you are prone to misusing it. And this I borrow the arguments of Dambisa Moyo. I'm not arguing just out of my own opinion. These are founded research of Dambisa Moyo in her book Dead Aid. That loans and grants and all these things
taking money
encourage corruption
through favoritism. You have already crossed the line. But Lawel says there is even a further line you shouldn't cross.
Yes. I said this. I said it is a product of
the point.
One, corruption, two, incompetence. Which of course all are influenced by politics. One, because there are people who are genuinely doing legitimate business who need government to just come up and intervene. And these are people I've talked about who open shop, want to, like he said, to export coffee and compete at the global market. They are not getting this kind of sustenance and help from government. You have that similar intervention given to people like the ones I've told you about who spend millions in testing coffee. And I'm saying that's not just corruption. You also have like ugly levels of incompetence. Because even if we were to accept our reality, that we have a corrupt regime or politics, that even the people who are getting that money are also not using it. I don't know if you're getting
That's
me.
why
So your point, for avoidance of doubt,
It's
impossible
because you're
for you to-
trading, you're trading on a slippery slope.
Yeah.
For avoidance of doubt,
Yes,
not to
yes.
be misquoted.
Yeah.
You're saying it's a combination
Yeah.
of corruption and incompetence.
And incompetent of the corrupt.
And me,
Not saying that one is okay. And
No.
my point to Lawel
Yeah.
is that for him to expect someone who has gotten money through corruption
Yes.
to use it in a way that benefits somehow the vast majority of people is him being naive and is him having wishful thinking.
All right. But let's move on.
Because of the mode through which the money is gotten,
Yes.
the person who has gotten it just has no
regard or
Fair enough. Lawel has
no obligation.
Lawel has considered that point.
You
Comrade Lawel has
Yeah,
considered that point.
But
Let's move
it
it.
could relate to what we're talking about
Yeah.
with Tature.
Yeah.
Even when Tature is favored,
Yeah.
we are not sure that he's saying that Tature is an astute investor who is going to get this money back, because we have seen him bailed out and he has not done it, and we are also seeing that this particular loss was a product of his poor deal with Vantage, which he could not live up to. And therefore, one first is that Tature is favored, but even when he's favored, he's not providing solvency. Yeah.
Yes, fair enough. I think that that's a fair point to make, Lawel. Let me come to you now, Moses Kidega, and I would like to ask you a question that relates to what you think is the role of Parliament in making sure that if this, as colleagues you suggest, is a bad decision, shouldn't be passed by Parliament.
No, I don't know. I think it was the good Professor Montesquieu who told us about separation of powers, and that the three arms of government should be able to work independently. That very good narrative was in the recent past countered by the argument by the former Chief Justice Benjamin Odoki, that these three arms of government are like three cooking stones on which a pot sits. That one somehow fits into the other, and they need to be able to interconnect and interrelate. So now here you have an executive that has taken a decision to bail out a prominent or renowned businessman. So how does how does Parliament come in to check the actions of the executive? And for example, what law would they be able to ride on? Is that, first of all, the Public Finance Management Act gives the Minister of Finance powers to and it is at his or her discretion to really give incentives to businesses. That power is given to the Minister of Finance. So someone can argue and say that the Minister of Finance, or government in this case, is acting in accordance to the law. But you see, like the good dad Dr. Kawumba says, that not everything that is in the law is lawful. I think that the actions of government in this case could be challenged by Parliament. And I think for the benefit of the vast majority of Ugandans, this, in my view, is a bad decision, because government investing in all this money to sort of salvage one individual, I think, is not being fair. It abuses the principle of equity. It abuses the principle of fairness. All right. And that is why I still go back to the argument that if government wants to bail out businesses that are in crisis, the process should be institutionalized. There should be a clear framework on how this is done. Anyone, irrespective of the size of your business, you apply through the same process, and there is a vetting that happens. And I mean, this vetting goes ahead to address the questions that Lawel is asking, that at times these businesses find themselves in a crisis out of their own making, out of their internal failures. So this vetting shall be able to clarify and say, but now this business X, you find yourself in this kind of crisis out of your own individual weaknesses, and in that case government shall be more reluctant to bail out such an individual. But in this case, we are going to encourage complacency, because Bitature, believe me, if he is bailed out today like he has been bailed out in the past, even tomorrow he will still come back and expect the same thing, all right? Because there is no one to hold him strictly accountable. And you know what? And the issues that led to his financial crisis haven't been addressed. So we shall find ourselves moving in a vicious cycle. The issues aren't being addressed. Therefore, he finds himself having a loss again, government coming in, and it is the same thing. So Parliament, yes, should intervene and where they can, make this process a much more formal process. Perhaps maybe come out with a bailout act or something. I don't know, but perhaps this is the right time for them to think about it.
All right, Lawel, of course, the public outcry is very clear, and I think that most members of the public clearly do not like what is being proposed. I think even 7 years ago, there was the same proposal to the tune of 1.7 trillion to bail out. I think that members of the public came out strongly, and government didn't go ahead with that proposal. Lawel, do you believe in the Ugandan political landscape there is still a role for public opinion in influencing government decision on matters as such?
I think yes, and more than before. There seems to be more people, especially I think by creation of social media, that has created a platform where people's opinion, public opinion, gets to be seen and measured. So there's that level of platforming. And quite a time we've had situations where government has had to respond based on public opinion. Towards, you saw the exhibition on potholes, which had, I think, a shift to prioritizing KCCA when its budget was so small and there's no attention. At least maybe there's no big shift in the budget of KCCA, but you saw there's general goodwill born out of that public opinion.
MK had to also command.
Yeah, but public opinion to make sure the issue of roads is paid attention to. I think largely, and I think even Parliament usually it rides on public opinion. I'm convinced that increasingly public opinion seems to have an influence. It can be a question of whether public opinion's influence matters much more than individual or political interests. That's a different discussion. But does the public have a say? I think yes, today more than before.
Do you believe that the government would let Patrick Lutatua and his enterprise to go under because of public opinion?
Like I said, I think what we are looking at is a discussion of whether public interest and Parliament have capacity to override individual interest, especially of the first family and those who hold power. And I don't like to always categorize it as NRM generally, because most of them really don't have power. I think we have seen cases where Parliament has said they are not going to pass a supplementary budget. There was an issue with, I think, was it Rocket? This same entity, which I think is also run by Rabogo, where the Deputy Speaker summarily passed the resolution without it being debated. And so also is that even if Parliament has power, they have ways they always smuggle and get their way out. And so I think all it's going to show is to what extent is government interested in Lutatua for individual interests. But if it's for public interest, like, oh, we need jobs, we need employment, I don't think that government would push that at the expense of public opinion and Parliament position.
Kidega, the NRM enjoys an overwhelming majority in the Parliament.
Yeah.
And Lawel is convincing us that the public opinion can actually shift things here and there. I'm optimistic that if we made some noise, then the Parliament can hear the voice of the people and take a different decision on this particular matter.
You see, Hariss, in 2017, Ugandans made noise, and their voice regarding age limit was out there, but Parliament went ahead to pass that bill. So like he said, if the executive wants something to get done, I think somehow they have the mechanisms to coerce, but also to persuade and to get what they want to achieve. But also, I know the president as someone who is a social democrat. I think that he also does acknowledge the voice of the people. He's someone who understands that his long stay in power has been facilitated by popular support, and he knows that he would not at any one point want to lose that. So I think he would try to strike a balance between the interest to salvage the business of,
They say the
I don't know,
president is a Democrat.
yes, a social democrat. I said that, and I can justify. I can say
And
it
in,
any
the
day,
same,
any time.
and in the same vein, you said
Yes.
that in 2017, the voice, the popular voice was clear
Yes.
against the age limit, but then nevertheless it was passed. But then the same
Passed-
man
Passed
who
by
passed,
parliament, not by the president.
are you now?
The bill was passed by
But
parliament.
you already said.
Bailing out is an executive decision.
Moses.
Amending Article 102B
Moses,
was
you
a
already
decision
said.
of parliament. So those,
Moses,
let's not
I
mix
want,
issues
I would
here.
like to get you clear.
Yeah.
You already said that.
No, don't mix issues. Yeah, as simple as that.
You already said that the Lawel said
Because you
that
already said that when government wants
whatever
something
the
to pass,
first
it
family
will.
wants,
Yes.
the parliament will pass.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you say,
I
meaning
said
that
the
the
executive-
parliament is under control of the first family, at least according to Lawel, and many members of the public tend to agree. And then in 2017, the popular voice was that there should not be amendment of the constitution. Nevertheless, there was amended.
By
But then
parliament.
the man is a social democrat. Would you like to revise that?
The president of Uganda is a social democrat.
All right.
The bill of 2017 was passed by parliament. It wasn't passed by the executive.
Okay.
It was discussed, debated, and passed by the Parliament of Uganda, the People's August House. The issue of bailout is as it stands today, it is an executive decision. All right, and that's why I say that the executive, if they indeed want to bail out Bitature, they will go to whatever extent it means to bail him out for whatever reasons best known to them.
All right.
But the NRM and its numbers in parliament is that, and of course you might have to interest yourself in the book written about Kenya's politics tyranny of numbers, is that for as long as these numbers are not being used to perpetrate an injustice, I don't think there's anything wrong with the NRM having majority MPs in parliament. For as long as these numbers are not being used to pass laws that cause or perpetrate an injustice to the people, I think there should be nothing to worry about. That, yeah.
Okay. All right, Lawel, you wanted to respond to that?
I don't think it's exclusive and executive. I think Parliament has.
All right, we will take a commercial break, and when we return, we shall then shift our gears to consider the standoff between the opposition and government in Parliament. Please stay with us. You are watching Focus on Parliament.
Digital rights are those human rights and legal rights that allow individuals to access, use, create, and publish digital media or to access and use computers, other electronic devices, and telecommunication networks. Digital rights include a right to freedom of expression, information and communication through technology, a right to privacy and data protection, a right to credit for personal works, a right to universal and equal digital access, a right to identity, a right to anonymity, a right to be forgotten, and a right for protection of minors, among others. The state's digital rights are frequently violated through various unfair actions, for example, blockage of websites and social networks, theft of credentials, unauthorized use of people's data for personal gain, privacy intrusion, online censorship, arrests and intimidation of online users, internet blockages, and the proliferation of laws and regulations that undermine the potential of technology to drive social, economic, and political development worldwide. It is hence every citizen's responsibility to respect rights of other digital users and to speak out or report to the responsible parties when one's rights are violated.
Welcome back. You are still watching Focus on Parliament, and we have been evaluating, or rather interrogating, the procedure that the government follows in giving out bailouts to crumbling private enterprises. In the second episode, we shall shift our gears and consider the standoff in the parliament between the government side and opposition side. With me in the studios is one and only Lawel Muhwezi. That's the correct name, Lawel.
Yes.
Please forgive me. Who is a legal scholar at Makerere University, but also the acting president of Now Generation, which is a pressure group. It also says they intend to form a political party. And also is with me is Kidega Moses, who is a national youth leader with the National Youth Council, also a legal scholar at Makerere University. So it's a pleasure to have you guys. Now, in this last segment, I would like us to shift our gears and look at the standoff in the parliament. Now you guys are keen observers of parliament, followers of government, very passionate and interested young Ugandans. We all know the events that have taken place, especially following the arrest of the NUP president, His Excellency Robert Kyagulanyi, at the Entebbe International Airport when he was returning from his diaspora mobilization shows. The leader of opposition wanted to show the evidence of that arrest, which he considers to have been a violation of the president's human rights. But also there was another violent arrest at the headquarters of NUP, where the Secretary General and spokesperson of that party was arrested. So the leader of opposition wanted to show this evidence in Parliament so that Parliament can take its decision in line with its constitutional duty. The Speaker, or rather the Deputy Speaker, didn't grant the permission, and as such, there's been a standoff for consecutive sessions, and the opposition has not been in Parliament. Lawel, does this hurt the image or the reputation of Parliament?
I want to borrow from the thought of defamation, that you cannot defame someone, because the ingredients of defamation is that one has a reputation. It's very difficult to defame someone who does not have a reputation.
Okay, so you
or
say
that
Parliament
if something
has no
is true,
reputation.
then it cannot be an act of defamation.
Okay.
I think to assume that the current events harm the image of Parliament is to assume that that image still exists. I think what we are facing is just consistent with the many times where we have non-substantial debate. We have been discussing that there are a lot of things that need to be discussed and put in place, but it's rare that you get these hot debates in Parliament. Even when they pass serious legislation, usually it is a few individuals in attendance, and it passes quickly with minimal debate. Me and you have attended law school, including him, and you know sentiments around your lecturers on the quality of the laws that come from that house. And so for you to assume that this has an effect on Parliament's image, I don't think. Even if you look at the people who steer the house, they are not those that attract. So the point I want to make is this. I don't think that we should resign and say our Parliament is like this. I think we can consistently have a voice which is saying, look, there are many pressing issues that are affecting Ugandans. Let us not have debate that is non-consequential dominating. Things like issue of Zake and Honorable Chinyamatama, which fed us into this conversation, really don't concern Ugandans. It's the same thing even with the standoff, is that you have a speaker, because the deputy speaker is a speaker in substance when they are chairing the house, who just previously accepted a form of evidence of proceeding, and this time he changes the rules or he does not use the same power. What he does is be clever by a half by subjecting it to a vote, even when we know that on such instances, the speaker can use their power to say, for the sake of equity, let us have this over with. Government has the majority numbers. It can always get find a way of getting what it wants, but it can't be to the detriment of the general interest of the public. But also, it puts the reputation of the House in disrepute by saying that people can have justice and others can't have them. It is possible to debate and vote and you will win because you have the numbers, but let there be some sort of equity. You get, and so this whole vulgarized conversation where we can't have our members debate because the speaker is taking advantage of his position and the numbers to perpetrate an injustice.
All right, fair point to make. Moses, we know that the members of the opposition are the minority in the parliament. So by walking out, what do they intend to achieve? Because we know Parliament can always move on without them because, you know, the ruling party can always have the quorum.
Oh, thank you, Hariss. It's quite interesting. And I'll begin by saying this, is that the concerns being put by colleagues in the opposition are, in my view, substantial because they raise issues of human rights violations, they raise issues of people that have disappeared, and all these other concerns. They are substantial matters. And if I'm to borrow the words of Udo Odoma in the ex parte Matovu case that dealt with the issue of the rights of an individual, is that, and you recall Abu Mayanja, who was, I think, the government lawyer at the time, I'm not sure. Yes, Attorney General. And the argument that Udo Odoma said was that when the rights of an individual is at stake, we need to, at times, you know, be much more intentional with how we deal with these issues. All right. And of course, that was premised on the habeas corpus and the principle of substantive justice. So I think that government should not wish away the concerns being raised by the opposition. And government should take them seriously because these citizens are citizens of Uganda. And the social contract theory, as we know, it gives government a responsibility and a mandate to really, because citizens play or meet their obligation in the contract, which is to pay their taxes and to religiously perhaps follow the laws of the land. Government on its end must fulfill its obligation, which is to provide security to its citizens, both internally and to protect its territorial integrity. So if there are concerns that there are missing persons, government should be able to come in. The point that I depart from with the opposition is when they begin to politicize these issues. All right? Because if government is saying that, okay, present to us the list of these individuals, and indeed government goes ahead to investigate and cannot find any record of these people, and our colleagues on the other side insist that these individuals indeed exist, then that now becomes their word against the word of the government, right? And that's why I think we miss the point that let the opposition be genuine in these demands.
So you don't believe that this...
clarity.
No, that's why I'm saying, and don't quote me out of context. I'm saying Lawel is, being quick. Don't quote me out of context. I'm saying that, and I began by saying that these are human rights issues, and government has a responsibility to uphold and protect the life and property of its citizens. All right?
Yeah. Let me allow
Lawel
a minute.
We have had cases where the Uganda Human Rights Commission uses those cases where evidence cannot be found of those people being tortured, or even if it's an act of deceit on the side of opposition. That is true. But again, we must never forget that it's not the responsibility of the opposition to provide these lists. And I think even when we have cases of deceit, let's say they are there, government still has the duty to investigate and even look out for those who are tortured but cannot be brought out by the opposition.
Come on, guys. Let's be fair.
But colleagues,
Let's be
I
fair.
felt that
Just
there's
hold up.
common ground. Just a minute.
Just a second,
Just
please.
a minute.
To clarify on this.
Mm-hmm.
There is a case that I've forgotten. It is an administrative law 2 case. The principle in the decision of that case was that when you overwhelm a government with over redundancy, the government could end up failing to function.
Yeah.
You want the government to spend half of its time looking into the same issue. When is this government going to be able to work?
But Moses,
let's talk about fundamentalism of human rights.
No.
Let's get
Lawel,
certain facts clear.
My point here is that, and I began I began
Moses,
in a very clear manner, and I said that these issues must be addressed by government.
You began very
but
well.
What I'm saying is that we should not steer for government from functioning. Because
but I want us to
on
clarify
an
the
issue
record.
that is
I would like
ambiguous.
to clarify the record, Moses.
Yes.
That it is factual that these risks that you're talking about, the leader of opposition has presented in Parliament, I think about 2 years ago, because this is a protracted issue.
Yes.
They have been presented to government before, to the Uganda Human Rights Commission before. So as to the existence of these lists, that is no question. There's no question.
Yes.
As to whether these people are missing, that is no question. As to whether, like Lawel is saying or alluding to, whether there are cases of torture or not, there is no question. I think that there is a lot of evidence all over the public. I mean, there's a case of Kakwenza, there's a case of Maseruka.
Which I'm not disputing.
There are many cases. There are many cases. But specifically, what the members of parliament, specifically the leader of opposition and team, are saying there are human rights violations, and they attribute the violations to government, and they are asking the Speaker of Parliament that let us present evidence. Okay?
Because there's precedent.
Because there is precedent. So I would like, I thought that we should clarify the record for our viewers. Because when you say that there is some politics, I don't think there is politics here, because
You brought in the general discussion of what has been happening.
But go on with your point.
You see, does Parliament have the solution to the concerns being raised by the opposition? That's the first question. All right? What is the mandate of Parliament with regards to the issues being raised by opposition?
To hold government accountable, to oversee.
To what extent?
The acts of the executive. That is their constitutional mandate.
All right.
Kidega knows that all ministries are represented in Parliament. The Ministry of Internal Affairs.
Yes. Fair enough. Because we know that Parliament in its role makes advice to government. Its parliamentary resolutions are advisory.
Not only that,
they are advisory, and unless it is a law.
Not only
but
that,
if it is just a resolution, it is only advisory.
Not only that, Moses.
So, but let's get back to the gist of the matter. My point, and I began, and you guys, I thought you had understood me.
You began very well.
When I pointed out,
you began very well. Yes.
Udodoma.
Yes. To that extent.
Udodoma. Udodoma, who gave us a locus classicus.
Yes.
That led to Article 126 2E.
Yeah.
I give that very clear preamble. Issues of human rights, for as long as they are in contention, we must address them. Because human beings are inherently born with certain rights.
They're inviolable.
And that is the spirit behind the Magna Carta. All right? You're born with certain rights that are inherent, and no government should be in position to violate or abuse those rights. All right? And that's why I say that government is a duty bearer. It must be able to protect the lives and property of its citizens. And if there are concerns that there is person A missing, person B missing, government should come in quickly to investigate and try to do a sort of fact-finding check to be able to find this individual and present them back to their family. But now, in the case where individuals' names are being presented, government is saying that they have gone ahead to investigate. They have done everything. They have researched, and they cannot find these individuals.
Exactly.
So where does that put government
that's
in this case?
Up there.
You see,
for a moment.
And that is where my fear of politics comes in. It's a fear.
Moses,
I'm not saying politics is happening.
Before
I'm saying it's a fear.
Before I bring in Lawel,
I'm saying it's a fear of politics.
Before I bring in Lawel, there is a specific case of Chibalama. When these lists were presented, the Prime Minister pointed out, Chibalama is confirmed that actually they have Chibalama in custody. There are clips, there are video clips.
Is he in a gazetted?
To that extent, she didn't clarify. But what is on record? What is on record is that the Prime Minister confirmed that they arrested Chibalama as a dangerous person and they have him in custody. What is also true is that I think more than a year after her confirming that they have Chibalama in custody, the same has not been produced.
Now she says they don't have her.
She says they don't have Chibalama.
This is why I agree with Kidega.
Please come in.
And I think it's a point that the LOP has made, that whereas politics exists, issues that concern human rights should be everyone's concern.
Exactly.
There may be cases of deceit here and there, but it is true that there are people who are being tortured. Even if it's not torture, it's that we have leaders like Bobby Wine, like leaders of NUP, who are not handled in a most dignified way. Even if you disagree with that, shouldn't the opposition have the right to, broadcast and have a debate about it? Because it is very bad precedent when just because of your political interest or numbers, you decide that we are not going to accept to debate this. Yet it is an issue of human rights, which by a turn of events, like we all know that it's unpredictable. You don't know what the next 5 years or 15 years have, and which side you would find yourself. You could be a victim of similar misuse of power and abuse of human rights. And for me, as a normal Wananchi citizen, is to tell people who are on the other side that this sets a precedent for you as well. If you said you have no room to debate violation of human rights, it could be you next time. I think it is naive for them to stand up, make noise, and think they've won the day. Usually, it is the human rights that has lost that day.
Do you believe that, I'm coming to you, Moses, do you believe that the strategy by the opposition in this respect is working?
I think it works, because what's the essence of continuing to sit in that parliament when you cannot even debate the fundamental to humanity? So what else? They don't regard the debate on human rights, then they bring something on economics and what? And then you debate it. I think that they are principally justified to resist the abuse of human rights, even when they are even if they are not guaranteed to succeed. I think they are justified to take that position.
I agree with you, Lawel. I think that where human rights are an issue, I think that everyone should use means available to them, provided they are peaceful means to, shine a light on the plight of those whose rights are being violated. Moses, I thought that there was general consensus in the room that when it comes to human rights, then we should use all the tools necessary to, bring these violations to an end. In your opinion, where is your point of departure from the strategy of the opposition in as far as, their campaign to end violation of human rights is concerned?
Thank you. Hariss, when we gave ourselves the current constitution, we agreed that never again.
Exactly.
Shall we go back to the days of tyranny, to the days of oppression, to the days of violent and violent abuse of power? So to that extent, I think that every Ugandan must be able to strive to live in an environment where human rights are protected and are upheld. So I am a crusader of those who say that human rights are fundamental and they must be protected. My point of departure is that when it becomes a low-hanging fruit, because of NRM's mistakes in the past where they have been caught on the side of violating human rights, my point of departure is now when the opposition want to use those mistakes in the past as low-hanging fruits to score political points. All right. So my point is the fear of it getting political. Not to say that the concerns don't exist. They could exist genuinely, but at times it could be misused to try and score political points. And when it gets to that extent, then sentiments are involved, and what is happening in Parliament begins to happen, because now it becomes political, and with politics, it's about interests. If your politics seems to be harming my interest, then I'm forced to become defensive. So when you look at Parliament and NRM MPs, they are behaving the way they are behaving, is because they begin to get the feeling that this is becoming a political issue and there is no genuine concern.
All right, gentlemen, our time
because the same MPs who are walking out of Parliament are appearing in committees. So, so business is being transacted in committees.
But on plenary.
But where the cameras are, they're saying they don't want to appear. And not because the issues of human rights aren't important. They're important, they should be discussed, and government must address the concerns. But I think how we do it also matters a lot.
All right, gentlemen, thank you very much. Our time is fast spent, but I would like to give each one of you 30 seconds to give your parting shots.
I think in conclusion, the British parliamentary system recognizes that there are minorities, and I think that Parliament should strive to defend also the right of the minorities to have their way. I think saying that they cannot display that video is equal to no platforming, saying we're not going to give you a platform to show that, and that essentially also violates the whole spirit of debate and discourse. Because even if there is a problem with that video, you can ably engage it on its merits and demerits, whether it's fabricated or not, as opposed to saying we shan't give it a platform. But generally, my conclusion is that Parliament needs to start debate on things that matter to the citizens. We're not interested in drama. If we want drama, we shall go to Theatre La Bonita.
Thank you, Moses.
Yeah, thank you. My last words are that people don't think that Parliament has legitimacy or credibility, like he mentioned earlier on, but at the same time, they want Parliament to interrogate a video that is that appears to be controversial. So I don't know. I find a bit of a mismatch there. But my parting shots is that the issues of human rights are fundamental, and that government should take the concerns being raised from this other side very seriously, and indeed go ahead to investigate. And in case there are legitimate concerns, let these people be presented before courts of law and tried through the judicial system. So they should not be held incommunicado as it is being alleged. The procedures of how to prosecute are clear. Let us follow them, and I mean everyone will be at peace. Otherwise, thank you for having me this morning.
Thank you, Moses, Lawel. Thank you indeed. It's been a pleasure hosting you both. I look forward to hosting you again. I've enjoyed a thrilling conversation with both of you. I hope that our viewers have too enjoyed the conversation. You've been watching Focus on Parliament. It's always a pleasure you joining us every Saturday here at Civic Space TV. I've been your host, Hariss Akampulira from the crew and myself. We wish you a very nice weekend.